Secretary Kerry is in Paris today trying to get Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to crack down on money flowing from their countries to ISIS. That's the terror group threatening the survival of Iraq and potentially Jordan.
I'm particularly grateful to our allies and partners from the Middle East, the Gulf states, particularly in Jordan, coming here to talk about a number of critical issues right now. Iraq, obviously, is one of the predominant ones. The move of ISIL concerns every single country here.
I'm joined now by Congressman Adam Schiff, a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Thanks so much for joining me, Congressman. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Well, you have Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, who are really helping to create ISIS. They don't seem willing to stop private money from their country going to that terror group. So what more can the U.S. do? What more should the U.S. do?
Well, I think that's starting to change. In the beginning of the Syrian conflict, I think many of the Arab states in the region were happy to throw their money in with anyone who was opposing Assad. And, little did they know, I guess, what they were creating. And unfortunately, we have now this growing, metastasizing ISIS in Syria and Iraq. I think our regional allies understand now the significant threat it poses, not only in Syria and Iraq, but to their own regimes back home, because ISIS has no great fondness either for the Saudi family or for the leadership in UAE or elsewhere, where they've also been involved in plotting against those regimes. So I think they've gotten the message. Certainly, I don't think we're going to see government support directly going to groups like ISIS, but they can do a lot more in terms of cracking down on wealthy people within their countries to make sure they're not funding these radical jihadi groups.
And Congressman, Secretary Kerry has been trying to pressure Prime Minister Maliki, as you know, trying to force him to have a political solution to this, to create a more inclusive government. It doesn't seem as though he's listening. Do you have any indication that a political solution is viable in this instance?
Well, he's listening. I'm not sure he's actually going to act on it, though. I mean, he's saying some of the right things. On the other hand, it seems he has ruled out categorically a national unity government, and that's really what Iraq needs. And it may be that things need to get worse in Iraq before he's willing to allow them to get better and relinquish his power, which would be the best thing to happen, in my view, to Iraq, because I don't think any of the Sunni tribes are going to be confident of a greater role in the governance of Iraq as long as he's at the helm. So I think we need to keep the pressure on. I was pleased to see Senator Kerry, or Secretary Kerry, indicate that airstrikes by the United States are not imminent. I don't think we ought to be further antagonizing the Sunnis that we hope to peel away from ISIS, which I fear, unless we're very discriminating in what we do in the air, may be exactly the effect those strikes would have. So I'm glad that we are being restrained in terms of use of military force, and I hope we're even more aggressive in trying to force a national unity government there, because I think it's utterly essential.
Well, and if you look at the polls, it seems like Americans agree with you. Anti-war sentiment is at an all-time high, and yet we're just learning that there are now 6 teams of U.S. military advisors operating in Iraq. There's approximately 50 additional military personnel who are arriving. If those advisors determine that airstrikes are necessary, would you support the president if he decided to move forward with that action?
Well, I would need to see changes in the Iraq governance. Otherwise, I don't think strikes are going to have any impact and could be very well counterproductive. It may be, if we get good enough intelligence, that we're able to go after very specific, irreplaceable leadership of ISIL. That may make sense, so I wouldn't want to rule that out completely. But in the current environment, where we still need to get a much better sense of who the targets might be, and even more importantly, until there's that political work that's done at the top, I would caution against any use of American military force.
And finally, Congressman, Secretary Kerry travels to Saudi Arabia tomorrow. What should his message to the king be?
Well, I think his message to the king ought to be one, as we were talking about earlier, to make sure that there isn't any money leaving Saudi Arabia that's going to support these radical jihadi groups, that there is much a threat to the Saudi regime as they are to the United States and the stability in the region, and that we could use the Saudis' help in encouraging their Sunni allies and these Sunni tribes in Iraq to divorce them from this marriage of convenience with ISIL. I think that's going to be a hard sell while the Maliki government is in place, but that's an argument that the Saudis are well positioned to help us make.
All right, Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.